Haunted house workers of Reddit. What's the worst thing you've witnessed? A few years ago, I ran a haunted house at the local rec center. The gym was sort of the grand finale, and it was set up like a giant indoor cemetery. A lot of families went through the haunt, and the kids were horrified by the zombies. A lot of kids would just be losing their minds when they got to the exit. But because I'm a jerk, the exit was fake. It was one of those heavy metal doors with a push bar on it. It led to another part of the building, but it looked like an exit. So I put a sign on it that said, "Thanks for coming. Please exit quietly." So the kids would be freaking out, and the same thing would happen over and over. The parents would say, "It's okay. It's over. Let's see. Look, it's the end." And the kids would be relieved, and they would run for the door. They'd push it open, and Leatherface would blast his chainsaw right in their face. We had a haunted trail and a hayride through a haunted forest at the place I worked when I was a teen. One part of the forest was really dense and had trees packed in close. And at the end of the ride, the owners decked the trees out in all shades of neon glow-in-the-dark streamers and placed black lights to make it really trippy. Usually, as the hayride started into that section, clowns would start flitting in between the trees, inching closer and closer to the ride, until the kids, and plenty of the adults, lost it. One day, the clowns decided to bring along coolers with beer and have a little party. They ended up getting so drunk that about half of them laid down in the trail to stop the hay truck, and the other half tried to hijack the thing, hollering about raising their pay. Another time, the trail tour guides deviated from the script a bit with a gag about an escaped convict, and a couple of people called 911. When I was a little kid, I was walking around through a haunted house that was set up in a couple of rooms in a school or something, and I turned a corner and saw some middle-aged woman screaming and violently stomping out some guy who was dressed up as a scarecrow. I think his job was to lay on the ground and just kind of lurch forward at people as they walked by, but he scared the lady so badly that she just started curb stomping the shit out of him. She eventually stopped after he started screaming, and he just got up and limped out of the room. Jesus fucking Christ. I'm a volunteer, and I've been punched pretty hard before, but I've never been stomped on. That's brutal. I really hope he was okay. When one particular big, burly dude figured out I was not, in fact, a mannequin, and I could, in fact, get out of my cage and come for him. He ran so fast, he went through one of our temporary walls like something out of a cartoon. Worst for him, funniest for my friends and me. My family used to run a haunted house through my high school years, when I and my friends could help out. We went all out. We hand-built a couple of coffins, we had a small airplane that had been sitting in a junkyard delivered to our backyard that we haunted and let people walk through, and we had rooms designed to disorient people with bright strobe lights and checkerboard walls, and a lot of other generally scary shit. In one of the strobe rooms, we dressed up a guy in a checkerboard suit, hat, and makeup, and you wouldn't be able to see him plainly standing in the middle of the room. He scared the piss out of a few people. After they were done in that room, they had to walk through me standing in a coffin pretending to be a mannequin. I took it very seriously, and the best one, after a young boy peed his pants in the strobe room, his mom and young sister were standing in front of me, talking to my dad about it, basically shooting the shit. The daughter whispered, "Mom, that doll in the coffin moved." And the mom came right up to me, poked me, watched me, and said, "No, honey, it's not real." Well, I was, and still am, real. And all three of them pissed their pants. 100% ratio on that tour. No, honey, it's not real. In that situation, the best possible response would be to wait till the mom isn't looking and wink at the daughter. I was working at a haunted house at an amusement park near my hometown, and I was cast as a victim. So one night, this couple passes me, and one of the actors comes running at me, so I start to scream bloody murder. The look on the boyfriend's face was utter terror. He picked his girlfriend up and swung me over his shoulder, ran us out of the area, and almost past the front gate. Security had to block his way and then reason with him to put us down. When I was 17, I was working in one as a scarecrow. Many people didn't know I was real because I only scared 1 out of every 10 people or so. I saw a bachelorette party come in. They all had matching green tube tops. I jumped up and screamed at the third woman in line, out of 8 or so. She jumped and screamed so badly that her breasts popped out of her shirt. She fell down against a wall and sat there for a moment, not realizing her breasts were out. One of them said, "Sarah, look down." She quickly looked down, blushed, and fixed her shirt. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the first pair of bazookas I'd seen in my life. Having worked in a local house for a few years, I've seen some hilarious things. Among them is a super tough guy who's giving his girlfriend shit for being creeped out. I pop out behind him in full costume as Jason, which elicits a high-pitched shriek from him. He's backing up further until my buddy, in full Freddy regalia, sneaks into his blind spot. The dude runs, slams into a wall, and knocks himself stupid. Girl laughed. Was hard not to hide our shoulders from bouncing up and down from laughter. I was dressed as a vampire and standing in a coffin. When people would come around the corner, I would jump out and scare them. A woman came through, and I jumped out. The woman lets out this piercing scream and jumps backwards. She hits the wall so hard that she dented it pretty badly. She kept screaming and wouldn't stop. She was hyperventilating, crying, and on and on. I was afraid to approach her and make it worse. I had to completely drop character and tell one of the guests to go get an uncostumed worker to assist her. She comes and gets her calmed down. She even talks to me and finally laughs about it. She leaves and I'm so relieved she was okay, but it really shook me up. 30 minutes later, she comes back. I don't jump out of the coffin. I just walk out and say, "What are you doing here?" She gets this embarrassed look on her face and says, "I had fun." Looking back on it, the funniest part was the looks on the faces of the people behind her in the line the second time. To them, this vampire just walks out of the coffin and gets all bossy with some random woman. Former Universal's Halloween Horror Nights lead here. People get fucked up. I saw someone OD right in front of me. I've had others just freak out and fight the scare actors. Some drop into a corner sobbing and have to be carried out. Depressants, hallucinogens, etc. Cocktails for these dehydrated people and introduce them into environments meant to disorient and frighten them. It's like the 4th of July for users. My husband and I loved Universal Studios haunted houses. We were walking through one, the monsters from the movies, I think, and we rounded a corner and one of the actresses was taking a sip from a water bottle. She was caught off guard and out of character, so she set the water bottle down, shrugged, and in the most monotone voice ever said, boo. My husband and I nearly died from laughter. Not personally witnessed, but here's my story. About 6 years ago, I worked at a haunt in North Carolina. In one part of the trail, there were body bags that contained mannequins, except one that had a coworker inside. He freaked out a lot of people, but one group came through, drunk and high, got really freaked out and beat him pretty badly. He got sent to the hospital, and they got sent to jail. I was a walk-around character at Six Flags one year. At night, I dressed as a scarecrow. For the record, I was terrifying and walked around the park, freaking people out. One night, not 20 minutes into my shift, I found a few high school kids to run up behind. As I got close, they started to scream. I got doused with ice water. Keep in mind, it was late October in Louisville, so it was around 40 degrees. I expected to find some dumb kid when I turned around. It was a teacher that was chaperoning a field trip. I asked her why she did it. She said, "You were about to scare those kids." No fucking shit. We had security escort her to the front of the park, and her group was asked to leave. I got to spend the rest of the night drinking hot chocolate in a dressing room with Tweety Bird. I played a zombie in a strobe light hallway along with someone else. He was in a straitjacket and would violently hit the chair against the wall while he was sitting down on it, and I would just stare at people as they walked by because I had been told that I had a really creepy smile with zombie makeup on. One of the groups that walked through was around 5 elderly folks. After my hallway partner did his jump scare, an old guy from the group started laughing. Then he saw me, laughed even more, but started coughing violently. He leaned against the wall, grabbing his chest. While he slowly fell towards the ground, my hallway partner and I just stood there in shock, frozen, not knowing what to do. I wasn't sure if I should call 911 or what. His friends weren't helping him, but a second later, he gets up, points, and laughs at us. That's the only reason I look forward to being old. You get to with everybody. I worked at a haunted house where a pregnant lady went through the more interactive and scary part of the house rather than the easygoing side. She runs into 2 6'5" guys wielding real chainsaws minus the chain. Yeah, she went into labor. My parents met for the first time in a haunted house. My father was working there for the summer, and his job was to stand beneath the stairs and shake some of the loose steps back and forth while making scary noises, etc. Well, one night, my mother and some of her friends went through said haunted house. They eventually made it to the stairs where my father worked. He shook one of the steps, and my mother stumbled, breaking the heel off of her high-heeled boots. She put up a stink and got my father fired. So for years after that, they told the story that my father, claiming some crazy got him fired, and my mother claiming some douche almost killed her in a haunted house. It wasn't until they were dating, about 4 years later, that they figured it out. I didn't work at the haunted house, but I went to it around the same time this happened. Some girl working there was supposed to be on a bathtub with a rope around her neck loosely, but she slipped and ended up hanging herself. Luckily, another one of the employees noticed while walking through and got her down before she died. It was at Creepy World in St. Louis, for those that want to look it up. The fact that it wasn't designed to either break under tension or have an elastic section sounds like a pretty poor design. I worked security at one of these for a while. There was an area where you went through a maze, and the walls were a mix of jail style bars and mirrors. The room was filled with fog and super bright strobe lights. Here's the kicker: one of the walls could be moved to close the maze and send the person into a circle with no way out. The employees were allowed to send people into the loop, which only added 3 minutes to the time. Well, the room itself was referred to as the seizure room. At least every other day, someone had a seizure in there. One night, a kid gets sent into the circle, and because of the dense fog and frequent moving of staff, gave you a killer headache to be in there too long. No one noticed he didn't come out. About 30 minutes later, a patron starts yelling, and we see him. Other patrons had seen him but assumed it was a prop. He had a seizure and hit his head when he fell. Lots of blood. He was okay when the ambulance took him out. Just a really bad head laceration. Many rules were made about the maze after that. I've worked several seasons at a haunted house, and I've seen some drunks throw up, pass out, etc. But the weird thing that happened several times is that sometimes when I jump out and scare a female customer, her reaction will be to kiss me. The first time I just thought, okay, that was weird, interesting girl. But then it happened several more times. I think it's just some kind of weird defense mechanism. I mean, I think they must know they're not in actual danger, but by kissing, they are quickly negotiating the social situation into a non-scary situation that they are in control of. It's happened to several of the guys that have worked here, but it's never happened to Lance. Sorry, bro. Maybe this year.